Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandam anandam advaita purnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham parabrahma rupam ganesham bhajema. Team Param Vedanta extends a warm welcome to the 123rd session of Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse. Having completed all the verses of chapter 16, Daivi Sampath Vibhaga Yoga, we discuss the summary of the chapter in this session. Today's speakers include Srimati Chetana, Dr. Rupa Suresh, Dr. Komal Prasad, Dr. Kiran, and Dr. Sanjay Benakal. As always, our revered teacher, Dr. Timmappa Hegde sir, will share his insights and help us get more clarity with his introduction and concluding remarks. We have special chanting today by Srimati Radha Ravi, who will sing Dvadasha Stotra for us at the end of the presentations. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vasumati. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We have concluded the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And as is our tradition, we will look at the summary of the 16th chapter. So in a matter of 60 minutes, we will get the gist of this entire chapter. As we know, from the third Shatkam onwards, Sri Krishna has been emphasizing the importance of values. That means for a person who is in the path of spiritual evolution, necessarily has to be a value-based person. Now, what is value-based? In addition to what we listened to in the 16th chapter, which is the summary we are going to listen today, how do I know what is right and what is wrong? I know very clearly how I need to be treated by others. Can that be the standard as given in this very nice verse in the 6th chapter? Atmau pammena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna. Samam pashyati. That means if I can be taken as a standard, the way I would like to be treated by others, in the same way, I will treat others too. Sakom va yadiva dukkam sayogi paramo madha. So with that background, any action that I do can produce a certain amount of karma. We can introduce values in society only or very powerfully by the law of karma. What is this law of karma? Let us be very clear about it. Why do good people suffer? And this is one of the common questions that bugs all the younger minds. And that is, you see a lot of corrupt people thriving and getting away with all their actions, whereas the moral and good people suffer. What is this law of karma? The law of karma says, be very conscious of every action that we make, because what we sow is what we reap. An action can happen from my thoughts, an action can happen through my words, and action can happen through my deeds. The law of karma says, my today is the result of my past karma, and therefore my future is going to be a product of the actions that I commit today, and therefore be a very conscious choice maker. There are certain principles regarding the law of karma. Any action that I do can produce a result, and this result can be either visible, which is called a drishta phala, or an invisible result called an adrishta phala. That means whenever I do a good action, I can get an immediate result. There can also be a certain amount of punya, which I may not be able to see immediately. Any good action brings out happiness. Any bad action results in papa and sorrow. And even that sorrow can be drishta, evidently available to me, or it can be adrishta. Based on this, very nicely brought out in Tattva Bodha, and we are studying Tattva Bodha together, we should be very clear about the three categories of karma. As per the Vedas, we have lived not only one life, we have lived many lives. in each of our lives, it is possible that we may not have fully consumed the good or bad action. Those actions which have not been utilized in a particular life, both good and bad, are stored in a certain data called a collective data, which is called Sanchita. Sanchita means the accumulated past punya or papa. And because we have many lives, we have a huge store of punya and papa. Just like when you make an investment, that investment matures over a period of time. The dividends come at a certain period of time. Your fixed deposits mature after a particular day. Whatever punya or papa that have been done in that Sanchita bag, in that Sanchita collection, a certain amount becomes ready for use. It is called fructified. And that from that fructified portion is given to the jiva when a person is born. So each child, when the child is born into this world, comes with a set of punya or papa, which is known as prarabdha karma. And this punya papa determines the kind of body, the kind of family, the kind of so many, whether good or bad things that are going to happen to your life. It also determines the amount of lifespan that you have. Your prarabdha karma depends. If your karma quotient is large, both punya and papa, you have a longer life. If the karma quotient is small, the life becomes smaller. And that is why those who have the skill in astrology are able to assess one's lifespan based upon some indication that they may have. And that which is available for this life is called the prarabdha karma. These terms we should be aware because they come in our shastras again and again. Every day of my life, I have an opportunity to do good actions which can add on to more punya. I can do bad actions which can add on to more papa. These good and bad actions can be exhausted in this life, or if it is not exhausted, it can go back to that accumulated data, which is also called the Sanchita karma. So we have three types of karmas: the Sanchita karma, which is the accumulated data. What is available for my present life is called prarabdha, and the karma that I do during each day of my life, that is called the agami karma. Now, just like in a court of law, the law books will tell us what is right and wrong, just like the scriptures tell us what is right and wrong. But then, whenever an action is done, whether the action deserves to be rewarded or deserves to be punished, this has to be judged by an intelligent principle. So the lawyers will argue, but there is an independent judge who has to decide whether these actions are good or bad. Now, any action that I do may be seemingly good with a bad intention. That means the motive with which I do an action is perhaps more important than the action itself. And therefore, how will anybody know what is the motive with which I do a particular action? Motive is accessible only to someone who is within me, someone who has access to my mind, and that can be possible only by Ishvara, the witnessing consciousness. And in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 8th chapter, Sri Krishna declares that Adi Yajna Aham Eva. I am the witnessing consciousness. I am the karma paladata. I am the one who knows the motive with which you do all your actions. So I am that person who's there within each one of us. And when I become aware of this conscious principle who is there within me, now this becomes a certain deterrent, because wherever I am there. Just like we've seen in the Mundakopanishad, there is that Rukma Varnam, that golden bird, the higher bird. There is always the higher bird in me who's observing me. And therefore, the law of karma can be a strong deterrent for us to live a value-based life. Again, who is this Adi Yajna or Ishvara? Residing in the heart, the Lord knows every action. He is the receiver of the karma as well as the giver of the karma phala. So every experience that I have, good or bad, is the result of my past karma as decided by the karma phala data. Why am I stressing again the law of karma again and again? Because if the law of karma is understood and accepted, then certain things in our life can get transformed. We see so much of inequality in life. Life does not seem to be fair. Sometimes this question always comes, why me? Why am I subject to this unfair amount of suffering? And whenever we go through this question of why me and this unfair life, the faith in God gets questioned. And then finally, if I'm able to accept the law of karma, I will lead naturally an ethical and a moral life. And also I know the future depends upon the actions that I do today. And I can also understand why good people suffer. A little more elaboration of what I have said already. The law of karma explains the disparity between the differences in various living beings. We are all born differently. On the surface, it is terribly unfair, but we know that God is not unfair, and therefore everything happens as per the law of karma. If this is so for others, it is true for me also. A spiritually evolved person, or the index of our spiritual evolution is, from today, as far as possible, I will not blame anybody for the difficulties in my life, because now I know that everything happens as per the law of karma, and I am responsible for whatever sufferings I'm going through, even though I have led a very ethical, moral, and a good life. And if this is so, my faith in God and my faith in Shastras will not be shaken, because now I know there is no question of injustice or injustice. God can never be unjust. And all my suffering is because of some actions that I might have done in some situation which I am not aware of. I know that even though I'm a good person, my suffering is not because of an unjust God. If I accept the law of karma, I can take responsibility for my future, because I know my future situation depends on my present action, and therefore I intelligently and consciously am aware of every action that I do. The next question sometimes we are called to answer is that why are good people suffering and corrupt people are having a good time? The answer given again by the law of karma is the present ethical person is suffering because of past unethical actions. And even the current corrupt person is enjoying because of past good actions. Therefore, the rule is ethics and values will bless us, unethical actions will hurt us. Finally, and this I think is very important, sometimes some of us have difficult people in our lives, and this person seems to be the source of so much of problems in my life. And if you understand the law of karma, it is said that this person is just a delivery agent of my own karma. And therefore, although it seems very evident to me and to others, I'm suffering because of so and so, it is just like a delivery agent who comes and hands over a parcel which he does not know and I do not know what it is. And let us not blame or shoot the delivery agent, and let us take a certain responsibility for ourselves, which is extremely difficult. With this background, let us look at today's class. But before we look into today's class, I would like you to jump into a certain way how a jnani looks at the law of karma. Once a person is clear about who I am, that I am not this body, which is going through punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, which is the result of all my past karma, which has got sanchita karma, which is doing agami, all that. Once there is a clear disidentification and I become a jnani, then what happens? Spiritual wisdom will make you live your life like this. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukrute dushkrute. Tasmad yogaya yujjasva yogaha karmasu kausalam. The real skill in action is the sense of no sense of doership. When there is no sense of I am doing any action, there can be nobody who can be punished or rewarded for. And a jnani lives because there is no sense of doership in a jnani. And finally, this is a very beautiful verse which comes in the 4th chapter. Yata adhamsi. Just like Samid Agni, a well-kindled fire can burn the fuel. Jnanagni sarva karmani vasmasat kurute tata. A beautiful example is given of Jnana Agni. The fire of spiritual knowledge has the ability to burn all our karma. Why are we in this spiritual path? Our teachers have promised. Once I have Jnanam, Jnanam is like radiation power. It has the ability to burn all my karmas, all my good and all my. And therefore, if that Sanchita bundle is destroyed, there is no more karma for me for any future janma. Then what is left? In this life, I have a certain amount of prarabdha. And as said in Manisha, prarabdhaya samarpitam swavapur yesha manisha mama. I'm convinced about this. Through jnanam, I can burn all my karma and be able to accept my prarabdha as if it is happening to somebody. So, in conclusion, the Sanchita karma is destroyed by jnanam. Agami karma is not there because there is no ego, so there is no sense of doership. The prarabdha karma is taken as happening to somebody. So a jnani now becomes immune to all positive or negative experiences because of the original consciousness, which is like the sun of knowledge. Our opening speaker will be Chaitanya, who will be summarizing the first 3 verses. Chaitanya, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. What do we do when we plan a holiday? We finalize a destination, book accommodation, pack suitable clothes. But before we start, we ensure that the vehicle we are using is fit for the journey. We get it fine-tuned, serviced, and roadworthy. Then we are all set to go. In the same way, are we fit for our spiritual journey? So Sri Krishna here will help us to get this fitness certificate. He has already spoken about the destination and preparation. Here in this 16th chapter, he talks about the fine-tuning and changes we need to make in our personality so that our spiritual journey is smooth and the destination is reached without any roadblocks. So the subject matter in chapters 16 and 17 is different from 13, 14, and 15. There is a shift in Krishna's teaching. So this shift is based on an important principle. To successfully achieve his primary goal, a person must adjust his lifestyle accordingly, and it must align with his goal. So here Krishna draws his teaching from the Veda Purva, which concentrates on the lifestyle, while the Vedanta explains the goals of life. But they are inseparably interconnected. Now, a person's way of life is heavily dependent upon his personality. So based on this, the scriptures have divided our personality into 3 broad groups. The first group is Dvesha Pradhana Swabhava. Here, this person has dislike which is predominant. It may be due to his previous birth, upbringing, environment, etc. The accumulated and suppressed dislike called Dvesha may develop into anger, which may lead into violence. He is volatile. And the scriptures call such a person as Rakshasa. This type of personality is not conducive for spiritual progress, but actually results in a spiritual downfall. Krishna does not cover this in this chapter, but we should keep this in our mind. The second group is Raga Pradhana Swabhava. This type of character is prone to attachment to sense objects, people, and places. He has desires, karma, for name, fame, money, etc. Although his focus in life is material enjoyment, he means no harm to others. But his nature is also unconducive to spiritual progress, And because he is in such an extrovert, he has no time for introspection. So Krishna calls them Asura Sampath, the ones who revel in sensory pleasures. This lifestyle leads to spiritual stagnation. And finally, the third group is Jnana Pradhana Swabhava. This type of personality considers spiritual knowledge as the primary goal. They do not dislike material pleasures, but they do not pursue them at the cost of spiritual growth. Krishna calls them Daiva Swabhava, bright like light. Thus, these three Swabhavas, Daiva, Asura, and Rakshasa, are compared to wealth or Sampath. So the character or the personality you have purchases your goals, and therefore it is called Sampath or wealth. And hence the title of this chapter, Daiva Asura Sampath. So Krishna lists the conditions or the virtues that is conducive to the Vedantic study initially and later for assimilation. He describes the conditions under which the goals can be met. For example, if one has to teach someone how to grow a plant, he has to teach him about the conditions in which this plant will thrive. So he talks about two sets of qualities here, Daivi Sampath, values which we need to progress in our spiritual journey, and Asuri Sampath, traits that will hinder us from progressing. Without these values, there will be no spiritual progress. Krishna begins by enumerating the Daivi Sampath in the first 3 verses in the 16th chapter. There are 26 of them, most of which he has already mentioned in the 13th chapter. Though all virtues are important, we'll highlight only a few here. In the first verse, he talks about abhayam, fearlessness, courage to continue despite obstacles and despite being in the minority. Then he talks about charity, dhanam, which helps in overcoming greed. Damaha, sense control or indriya nigraha, which does not mean suppression of sense organs, objects, but voluntarily regulating it. Yajna, sacrifice, literally means worship of the Lord, one-way ceremonial ritualistic worship like puja, homas, etc. More importantly, it is the conversion of all our activities themselves into a form of worship. Then he talks about tapaha or austerity, which helps us in developing tolerance. Then in the next verse, he talks about non-violence, ahimsa. And this is at all 3 levels, physical, verbal, and mental. He talks about tyaga, renunciation, which includes both external and internal renunciation. In the 3rd verse, he talks about dhriti, fortitude, the willpower to continue on the path. Sauchyam, purity, both external and internal purity. Finally, Krishna says, bhavanti sampadam daivam abhijatasya. All these virtues will be present in a person who is born with sattva guna. And if these virtues are not there from birth, we have to cultivate them. So having presented these types of inner wealth, he tells Arjuna that only Daivi Svabhava is conducive for spiritual pursuit. If you value spiritual knowledge, you must align your lifestyle with this goal. Only then we are prepared for this spiritual journey. Thank you. Hari Om.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Today, I'll be discussing the summary of verses 4 to 6 of chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita, which deals with Asuri Sampath Marga. In these verses, Lord Krishna talks about all those traits and activities, behavior and conduct which will adversely affect a human being, resulting in lack of samskara and spiritual downfall. In the first 3 verses of this chapter, Lord Krishna describes the Daivi Sampath, that is, virtues related to spiritually oriented person. Next slide, sir. Now he talks about Asuri Sampath, that is, materialistic tendencies present in all human beings. Let's observe the following table to understand better the virtues of Daivi Sampath. On to the left, which are about 26 in number, and the 6 features of Asuri Sampath to the right. The virtues of Daivi Sampath are modesty, purity, steadfastness, absence of restlessness, charity, absence of slander, and worship of God. The characteristics of Asuri Sampath are Dambaha, which is pomp and show, Darpaha, which is arrogance, externally expressed, Abhimanaha, that is superiority complex, also known as Manatvam, or internally thought of, Krodhaha, next slide, sir, meaning anger, Parushyam, implying impoliteness, harshness, rudeness, and without manners. And lastly, Ajnanam, which is ignorance of Dharma Shastras. Here in this chapter, when we say ignorance, it does not mean ignorance of self-knowledge. It means ignorance of Dharma Shastras. Next slide, sir. The word Asura means one who places sense pleasures as his highest goals. The following figure makes it easy for us to recap what are the 6 sense pleasures. First of which is external arrogance, secondly, internal arrogance, thirdly, anger, fourthly, rudeness, fifthly, ignorance, and the 6th one is pomp and show. The whole idea is not to look for these features in others, but in oneself and try to reduce them. Divine nature in a person is conducive for moksha, whereas Asuric nature in a person leads to bondage. Lord Krishna says, do not grieve, Arjuna, you are born with divine nature. All humans have a mix of divine and devilish qualities in them. It is for us to nurture the divine qualities and walk the spiritual path to attain moksha. Going to the last slide, in this picture, Swami Chinmayanandaji quotes, on the absolute, there is neither good nor evil. They are in effect the play of Maya. It is the mind. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shruti asks us to replace Raga Dvesha based life system by Vidhi Nisheda based life. That is, we are all born with likes and dislikes. So that's our innate nature. Shruti is like a mother, like our 6th sense, which will want us to change and transform ourselves from Raga Dvesha based life, from like dislike based life, into a Vidhi Nisheda based life. That is, to follow what is to be done and to avoid what is not to be done. So it tells us what is right and wrong. So in other words, it wants us to transform from a materialistic value system to spiritual value system. It wants us to become a Prakrita Purusha to become a Samskrita Purusha. It's like a mother who teaches the child to wash hands before eating food. So initially it looks like whether the child dislikes it or not, it has to be done as a ritual, and that's how the child learns. And unless we have that kind of value to the Vedantic teaching, we won't transform ourselves into Vidhi Nisheda based life system. And we saw 3 kinds of human personalities based on the characters. Dvesha Pradhana, like if the child develops an aversion to hand washing and totally avoids it, that becomes a Rakshasi pravritti. So that's the one category. And the second category is Raga Pradhana, where the child would want to do that and may keep on doing that. It may become a Rasa Swada, where child will keep on doing that without knowing the next step, that we are washing the hands actually to eat food. It's not just to wash our hands. Or it may get into a strategy of washing with just a quick wash, like a quick puja, and then going for lunch. So this is also the second type, that is the Raga Pradhana life, which is Asuri Sampath. And the third one is Jnana Pradhana, to be aware, like a sixth sense, that we need to do something after actually we wash our hands. So that's what the Shruti teaches us. So here Sri Krishna enlists in detail what happens if we lack the sixth sense, the Asuri Sampath. These are kind of cautionary warnings, so that if we tread that path, we have to come back to the Daivi Sampath, the values which Shruti teaches us. So from verse 7 to 20, Sri Krishna enlists and elaborates in detail, so that it's very clear to Arjuna and all of us what is this materialistic value system. The Asura people, they do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. They have neither purity nor religious discipline. They have no truthfulness also. Pravrittincha nivrittincha janana vidurasura. That is, what to do, what not to do, they don't know. The discrimination is not there. They say the world is without truth, without dharma, without God. Why should a God be there? We're all born out of union of male and female. The world is caused by desire. What else? So this is their attitude. They have this delusion and insatiable desire, as we see in the next slide. And holding to such views, these indiscriminate people are lost spiritually. Taking to cruel actions, they become the enemies of the world and will become responsible for its destruction. Taking to insatiable desire, they are full of pretension, vanity, haughtiness. It's a verbatim translation of these verses, and each word is important. Even though this is a summary, it's worthwhile going through this to understand, and to be having this word of caution will take us to recognize when we transgress towards the materialistic value system. And haughtiness, holding wrong views due to delusion, they act with impure resolve. In the next slide, we see, given to deep and lifelong anxiety and holding enjoyment of sense objects as the highest goal, they are convinced in their belief that this is the highest limit of joy. It's a pity that they are unaware of the ecstasy and the pure bliss of being happy. So they limit themselves, considering this sense pleasures as the highest limit of joy. Bound by the strings of hundreds of expectations and given to desire and anger, they seek hoards of wealth by unrighteous means for the enjoyment of sense objects. So in the next slide, we see, I hoard, therefore I am. Like, I think, therefore I am. So they consider I hoard, therefore I am. I am the Lord. Like this monkey we see, which considers itself the world's richest monkey. This has been obtained by me today. I shall attain this desired object shortly. That's my plan. I have this much wealth now, and there will be much more later. So this is the kind of attitude and thought process. And then again, hitting out the rivals and finishing them off. This rival has been destroyed by me. I shall destroy the others also. I am the Lord. I am the enjoyer. I am successful, powerful, and happy. So this is the thought process. Is it rise or fall? As we see in the next slide, it is a delusion by ignorance. I am rich and of noble birth. I need not wash my hands. I am rich and I am noble by birth. Who else is there to equal me? I shall perform yajnas. I shall give charity. Even charity becomes a kind of and he feels I shall rejoice. So these people are completely deluded by ignorance, thoroughly confused by such innumerable fancies. Aneka chitta vibhanta, encircled by the net of delusion and deeply engaged in the enjoyment of sense objects, they fall into a foul hell. In the next slide, we see the arrogance, haughty, And even worship is pretentious, honored by themselves, arrogant and full of vanity and haughtiness due to wealth. They potentially worship through nominal yajnas, disregarding the spiritual rules, scriptural rules. Given to egoism, power, arrogance, desire, and anger, these slanderers hate me, as Krishna says, who is in the body of themselves and others. And then in the next slide, Shri Krishna says about samsara, what happens to them. I throw those haters of me who are not pious, cruel, and the lowliest among human beings perpetually into asura wombs, which leads to further samsara. Entering the asura wombs birth after birth, these stupid people do not reach me at all. They fall into still lower condition, O Arjuna. So with these harsh words, as a kind of caution, Sri Krishna lets us know the specific attributes of this materialistic value system as a kind of a danger signal that when we encounter that, not to transgress this, be aware and get back into our road towards the Jnana Marga, Jnana Subhava.
Namaste. If we want to condense the whole chapter 16 in one word, all that I can say is refinement. Refinement of what? It is not refinement of world, refinement of our neighbors or anybody. It is refinement of myself. Swamiji says, how much refinement you need? How is like how pure the gold will be? You can go on purifying it, 99.99, 99.99, 99. It's never ending. But the clearer the mirror is, the clearer the vision. So the clearer the mind is, the more clarity we will have about the world. This refinement can be considered under 4 angles. That is Manushya. We as a human being have free will or choice. We are not slave of our gunas. We can control what we are doing and we can take responsibility of the consequences. We can do something which is not required, or we need not do something which looks obvious. Whereas in animals, most of them are defined by gunas. And as a karta or as a doer, how do I influence others, my surroundings? Am I contributing more or am I destroying more? That is how I can refine myself. As a bhokta or experiencer, how do I receive things? As Sir says, when nobody is watching you, what you are watching, what you are experiencing, and when something which you don't desire comes, how do I take it? This is what is about bhokta. All these 3 should be in align with mumukshu, that is the entire desire for spiritual path. All the 3 actions above, whether it defines our spiritual goal, this is what we need to know. Once we understand these 4, everything Asuri and Daivi Sampath falls in place. The 4 to 21 verses talked about Asuri Sampath, and now we'll find out what is the root cause of these Asuri Sampath and whether there is any remedy, and also afterwards whether there is phalam, what is the fruit of such a thing. Lord says, Trividam Naraka, there are 3 highways or doors to Naraka. That is Kama-esha, Krodha, Lobha. That is desire, anger and greed. Here, Naraka means not something somebody is putting you into boiling water and all things like that. Lord considers anything which brings about spiritual downfall is Naraka. Then, Tasmat, therefore, you Tejat, that means give up this. Like how you give up something which is dirty, you just throw these things out. How to do it? It is not so easy to do that. First is, you have to, the root cause of all this is karma, that is incompleteness. So what we do is, first you have to convert the tamasic karma, that is the karma which causes more spiritual downfall, to rajasic. That means it is spiritually okay. Then slowly we move to sattvika karma, that is we should have a desire for spiritual knowledge. Our life should be altered so that it is in align with spirituality, not like going in the party, late night, etc. We should develop good things like yoga, etc. Once we do that, then things fall in place. Kama Esha, Krodha Esha. This verse of 3rd chapter is a reflection of this verse. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. As I told, the root cause of all this is incompleteness. That means that I am separate from everybody else, that I am separate from Lord. That is the root cause. Because I am separate from Lord, I think, oh, Lord has everything, I don't have. So I want to possess something. And I don't possess what that person has. This leaves to me a void. So I have a desire to fill this void. Just like this person has no hair, he will long for wig or something, and he does action into it. So this incomplete knowledge drives the action or karma. And once he possesses it, he wants more, better one, and other things. But whatever worldly things we possess, as it is said in Taittiriya Upanishad, the moment you possess it, the satisfaction or happiness it gives or joy it gives starts decreasing. So you feel incomplete, so you'll go for the other one. And suppose you don't get that, then you will become anger. So this vicious cycle is what is the karma and karma cycle, and that is the root cause of Asuri Sampath. Next slide, please. Here, what happens once we have that refinement, that is the 4 paths I told. Etar vimuktaha kaunteya tamovar vinaha. So he says, freed from these gates of hell, man pursues what is good for himself and thus attains supreme goal. That is Naraha Acharits. That is, Acharati here means mumukshu. Etar vimuktaha, that is freed from kama, krodha, etc. Then once he does, then what to do? I have become very purified. He says, before you know you are in the path, the Lord comes in the form of Guru and blesses you. This happened in my own life. I got an intense desire to study Gita. And as usual, I started off with Gita as it is, but I couldn't make head or tail of it. So I was going through podcast of Swami Tyagananda of Ramakrishna, Harvard. Before I knew, Sir told, hey, we will start spiritual class. And then we started learning mantras, Asatoma, Sadgamaya, etc. I didn't know even to chant, let alone the meaning of it. Now, I am in the pool of satsangis and gurus. Even if I want to separate out, I can't, because that is how the Lord provides it. And as he had said before, Yoga Kshema Vahamyaham, leave all that to me, just concentrate on Chitta Shuddhi. Once it is done, I will take care of moksha. That doesn't mean that he will bless with some, hit on the head, etc. That means it is through Guru, Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasa. And how to find out, how to get this refinement? Swamiji here says, Lord Krishna has not told, through, next slide please, Pancha Maha Yajna. That is Deva Yajna, Pitru Yajna, Manushya, and Bhuta and Brahma Yajna. So once we are in the path of this Pancha Maha Yajna, the Satsanga and Guru comes itself, and you will be on the path of moksha before you know what happens. Thank you very much.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Just now we saw Krishna condensing the whole of Asuri Sampath into 3, basically Kama, Krodha, and Lobha, which he said are the 3 gateways to the hell, and one should avoid altogether. Such a person who wins over these 3, or by following the right path or dharmic way of life, will attain the ultimate goal in life. And in the last 2 verses of this chapter, Krishna gives a warning to those who do not follow his advice. What is the advice? This advice, where do we find this? So in these verses, he's emphasizing the importance of scriptures in one's life to attain the ultimate goal. Now, primarily, a person conducts himself in the world according to his likes and dislikes, and not by what is right or wrong. Who has to teach him what is right or wrong? Just like a child who needs to be told what is right or wrong by the mother, scriptures take the role of the mother in educating all of us. A human being, when born, is a raw product. He is known as a Prakruta Purusha. By going through a religious way of life, as mentioned in the scriptures, he becomes a Samskrita Purusha, a cultured person. So let's get into the verse number 23. Yaha Shastra Vidhim Utsrujya Vartate Kamakarataha Nasa Siddhim Avapnoti Na Sukham Na Paramgatim. He who lives according to the impulse of desires without following the scriptural teachings neither attains mental purity nor happiness. He does not attain the supreme goal also. What is meant by the scriptures here? It is the Veda Purva Bhaga and not Vedanta. Veda Purva alone deals with the Dharma Shastra, the way of life. It is about the right or dharmic way of life. Scriptures are to be considered as a user manual without which one will not have any direction in the life. Such a person doesn't know what to do. Life will be moving like a rudderless ship, taking a direction wherever the wind blows. He is governed by his own likes and dislikes. There is raga or dvesha. Scriptures give a direction to one's life. If a person acts by his own likes and dislikes without following the scriptural injunctions, he does not attain the mental purity which is required to be eligible for pursuing the knowledge, that is jnanam, which is the ultimate goal of life. Krishna says, such a person will not even be able to enjoy the material pleasures. Overindulgence in sense pleasures will rob a person of his health and also wealth. Coming to the 24th verse, therefore, what should be done? Tasmad chastram pramanam te karya vyavasthitau jnatva shastra vidhanoktam karma kartum iha arhasi. Therefore, the scriptures are the guide for you with regard to the norms, what should be and what should not be done. You should do your duty here by knowing and following the teachings of the scriptures. A person not only understands the scriptural injunctions, but also, most importantly, should implement them in practical life to get the benefit, which is the mental purity, and that's the prerequisite for knowledge. Whereas with Vedanta, knowing itself will give the benefit, which is the liberation. Hence, Krishna's advice to Arjuna is to lead a life as mentioned in the Dharma Shastra, attain mental purity, and be eligible for the knowledge. Thank you. Hari Om.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vande Vandyam Sadanandam Vasudevam Niranjanam Vande 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 Vandyam Sadanandam Vasudevam Niranjanam Indirapati Madhyadi Varadesha Varapradam Vande Vandyam Sadanandam Vasudevam Niranjanam Vande 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 Namami Nikiladhisha Kirita Grishta Pithavatu Vrittamashya Maner Kapam Shripate Pada Pankajam Vande 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 Jambunadhambaradharam Nitambam Chintyameshituhu Swarnamanjira Samvitam Arudam Jagadambaya Vande 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 Udaram Chintyameshasya Tanutve Appakilam Bharam Valitrayankitam Nityam Upagudam Shriyakaya Vande 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 शङ्खचक्रगदा पद्म धराश्चिन्त्या हरिर्भुजाः पीनवृत्ता जगद्रक्षा केवलोद्योगिनो निशम् वन्दे 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 स्मरामि भवसन्ताप हानितामृतसागरम् पूर्णानन्दस्य रामस्य सानुरागावलोकनम् वन्दे 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 ध्यायेदजस्रमीशस्य पद्मजादि प्रतीक्षितम् भ्रूभङ्गं पारमेष्ट्यादिवरदायी विमुक्तिदं वन्दे 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 सन्ततं चिन्तयेनन्तम् अन्तकाले विशेषतः नैवोदापु गृह्णन्तोऽन्तं यद्गुणानाम् अजादयः वन्दे 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 वन्द्यं सदानन्दं वासुदेवं निरञ्जनम् इन्दिरापतिमाद्यादि वरदेश वरप्रदं वन्दे वन्द्यं सदानन्दं वासुदेवं निरञ्जनम् वन्दे 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 Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Radha Madam, for rendition of this bhakti-filled composition of Sriman Madhvacharya in your melodious voice. Thank you, Dr. Hegde sir, for hand-holding us and ensuring that we are on the right spiritual path always. Our sincere thanks to all the speakers for an insightful presentation. Team Param Vedanta thanks each one of you for your encouraging participation and positive feedback about our sessions. Our next session on Monday, the 28th of November, is the 37th session of Disha, comparison between two types of goals, namely God and world, as explained in verses 15 to 22 of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, Akshara Brahma Yoga, will be discussed. Shariratrayam topic of Tattvabodha will also be explained. We conclude today's session with our usual prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.